sound of sirens echoed through the crisp autumn air as the sun sank behind the trees. Blue and red lights flickered against the golden leaves, reflecting across the glassy surface of Lake Windale. 6 police cars lined up outside the black wrought iron gates of Ashmore Manor, a massive stone estate that loomed on the hill like a ghost from another century. Beyond the gates, the gravel driveway stretched toward the house, long, silent, and empty. No one knew what had really happened inside. But the call that came into dispatch at 5:42 a.m. changed everything. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's trembling voice whispered through the line. There's blood all over the floor. Then static. Call disconnected. No one answered when they called back. Now, hours later, Sheriff Daniel Royce stood at those iron gates, staring up at the house through the bars. The autumn wind carried the faint scent of pine and something metallic. Something cold. Beside him, Deputy Claire Henson adjusted her jacket and glanced at the manor. Looks quiet, she murmured. Too quiet. Royce didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the second-floor window, the one half covered by a velvet curtain that shifted slightly, as if someone inside was watching them. Get the bolt cutters, he said finally. We're going in. The gate creaked open like a warning. The police cruisers rolled slowly up the long driveway. Gravel crunched under the tires. The massive oak trees that lined the path leaned in close, their red and orange leaves glowing under the flashing lights. When they reached the front steps, Royce could feel the weight of the place pressing down on him. The stone walls seemed to absorb the sound, swallowing every word. Dispatch. This is Unit 1. We've arrived at Ashmore Manor, he said into the radio. Possible homicide scene. Proceeding to entry. As they stepped out, the massive wooden doors opened. Standing there perfectly still was a woman in a red coat. Her blonde hair was pinned neatly, her face calm but pale. Sheriff Royce, she said softly. You're finally here. Royce blinked. Ma'am, and you are? Evelyn Ashmore, she replied. This is my home. Claire's hand went instinctively to her holster. Mrs. Ashmore, we received a call from this address. Someone said there was blood. Evelyn smiled faintly, but her eyes stayed cold. Yes, she interrupted. There was blood. My husband's. A long silence followed. Inside, the manor was breathtaking and unsettling. Tall ceilings, golden chandeliers, portraits staring from the walls. But beneath the elegance, something felt wrong. The air was heavy with the smell of iron and dust. Evelyn led them to the study. There, on the marble floor, lay a dark pool of dried blood. But no body, no signs of a struggle. Just blood, perfectly centered in the middle of the room, as if someone had staged it. Where's your husband now, ma'am? Royce asked. She hesitated. I don't know. He was her. When I woke up, I heard him arguing with someone around 4 in the morning. When I came down, the door was open and he was gone. Claire exchanged a look with the sheriff. Any sign of forced entry? None, Evelyn said. The locks were intact. Nothing stolen. Royce studied her carefully. You said he was arguing with someone. Did you recognize the voice? Evelyn looked toward the window, the same one Royce had seen moving earlier. It sounded like a man, but not from inside, from outside the house. Royce frowned. From outside? Yes, her voice dropped to a whisper. From the lake. By noon, the entire perimeter had been taped off. Detectives combed the area, drones hovered overhead, and officers patrolled the shoreline. The lake stretched wide and still, the turquoise water reflecting the fiery autumn trees. Royce walked toward the edge, boots crunching over leaves. Something about this place pulled at him, a memory he couldn't place. Sheriff, Claire called from behind him. She was holding a black briefcase, half buried near the waterline. It was old, leather, with initials embossed on the front. J.A. Royce's pulse quickened. Jonathan Ashmore, he muttered. Evelyn's husband. Claire opened it carefully. Inside were documents, property deeds, old letters, and a photograph. Royce took the photo and froze. It showed the manor, years ago, but not in its current state. The lake was smaller, the trees fewer, and there was another building in the background, a smaller house, now completely gone. What the hell? He whispered. This isn't just an estate. This is built over something. That night, the manor grew silent again. The officers had cleared out, leaving only a few for the overnight watch. Royce remained behind, pacing the study, going over the files from the briefcase. Old letters dated 1972 to 1979, all written by someone named Eleanor Voss. The tone was desperate, pleading. "You promised me safety, Jonathan. But the lake doesn't forget." Royce rubbed his temples. "What the hell does that mean?" He looked around the study again, his flashlight sweeping over the bookshelves. Then a faint draft, cold air seeping through one shelf that didn't sit flush with the wall. He pressed against it. The shelf clicked and slid open. Behind it was a narrow staircase, spiraling downward into darkness. Royce turned on his flashlight and whispered into his radio, "Claire, get down here now." The air was damp and smelled of rot. The walls were stone, lined with old pipes and rusted lanterns. As they descended, the sound of dripping water grew louder. At the bottom was a locked iron door. Royce forced it open and froze. The room beyond was filled with photos, hundreds of them. Pinned to the walls, scattered across tables, faces of people, men and women, all with the same background, the lake. Some were dated decades ago. Some were from last year. And on the far wall, a single phrase painted in red. "The lake keeps what it's owed." Claire's voice trembled. "Sheriff, this is a crime scene. Multiple victims, maybe dozens." Royce's jaw clenched. "We need to bring Evelyn in." But before they could move, a sound echoed from above. Footsteps, slow, heavy. Then Evelyn's voice floated down the stairs. Calm, clear, and cold. "I told you not to come down here, Sheriff. Some secrets should stay beyond the gate." Royce raised his gun. "Mrs. Ashmore, step back. You're under investigation." Evelyn's silhouette appeared at the top of the stairs, the red coat glowing in the beam of his flashlight. She smiled faintly. "My husband tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen to him either," Claire whispered. "What is she talking about?" Evelyn tilted her head. "This house, this land, it was never meant to be built on. Every time someone digs too deep, the lake takes something back." The light flickered and then went out. A single splash echoed from the lake outside. Louder, closer, like something enormous had just broken the surface. Royce's radio crackled with static. Then a faint voice came through. "Sheriff, it's him, Jonathan Ashmore. He's walking out of the lake." What came out of the lake that night changed everything the town thought it knew about Ashmore Manor. If you think the story ends here, you're wrong. Stay tuned for part 2 of Secrets Beyond the Gate, where the truth finally begins to surface. The night was unnaturally still. No wind, no crickets, no sound, except for the slow, heavy footsteps coming from outside the manor. Sheriff Daniel Royce froze halfway up the staircase, flashlight trembling in his hand. Claire, just behind him, whispered, "Sheriff, did they just say Jonathan Ashmore?" The radio crackled again, static, then a panicked voice. "He's coming from the lake! Oh God!" The line went dead. Royce reached the main hall and looked through the wide front windows. And then he saw it. A man was walking up the driveway, drenched, clothes torn, skin pale as bone. His eyes reflected the flashing police lights like glass marbles. Jonathan Ashmore, the man who had vanished 24 hours ago. The man whose blood had stained the study floor. But he wasn't supposed to be alive. Royce's voice was barely a whisper. "That's impossible." Beside him, Evelyn stood at the top of the stairs, her red coat glowing like fire against the shadows. "I told you," she said calmly. "The lake keeps what it's owed. But sometimes it gives something back." Royce drew his gun. "Ma'am, step away from the stairs." She smiled faintly. "You can't stop it now." Royce stepped outside, the gravel crunching under his boots. His officers surrounded the figure cautiously, guns raised, voices trembling. "Sir, stay where you are!" The man didn't respond. Water dripped from his hair. His lips moved, but the words were slurred. Distant, like someone speaking from underwater. Claire whispered, "He's in shock." Or something worse. "Yona," then stopped in the driveway, eyes fixed on Royce. Then he spoke, a rasping whisper. "You shouldn't have opened the gate." Royce's pulse kicked. "Mr. Ashmore, you need medical attention." Jonathan suddenly lunged forward, screaming. His hands slammed against Royce's chest, knocking him back hard. Officers shouted, tackling him to the ground. But even as they restrained him, Jonathan kept repeating one phrase, over and over, louder each time. "It's still hungry. It's still hungry." When they finally subdued him, his eyes rolled back, and he went limp. Royce stood over him, breathless, staring down. Jonathan's pulse was steady, but his body was ice cold, colder than the air around them. 3 hours later, the scene had shifted to Windale County Medical Center. Jonathan lay in a hospital bed, hooked to IVs, his skin still pale, eyes half open. Royce sat in a chair beside him, recording device ready. "Mr. Ashmore," Royce said carefully, "I need you to tell me what happened at the manor." "Who attacked you?" Jonathan's lips trembled. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then a whisper. "It wasn't a man." Royce leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Jonathan's eyes darted to the corner of the room, to the window overlooking the lake in the distance. "She came back," he said. "Eleanor." Royce frowned. "Eleanor Voss? The woman from those letters?" Jonathan nodded slowly. "She warned me, told me not to disturb the foundation when we rebuilt the manor. But I didn't listen. The workers dug too deep. We found something in the soil. Bones. So many bones. I ordered them to cover it up." Royce's stomach turned. "And the blood in your study?" Jonathan's eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't mine. It was hers. She came through the lake. She wanted me to remember." Royce stared at him in silence. "You're saying a dead woman came out of the lake?" Jonathan's breathing quickened. "Not dead, waiting." Back at the station, Claire spread the contents of Jonathan's briefcase across a table. Old deeds, letters, and property maps. She circled one location on the oldest map. A smaller structure labeled Voss Cottage, built right where the modern-day lake now stretched. Royce pointed at it. "That's the house we saw in the photograph." Claire nodded. "The one that doesn't exist anymore." According to these records, it was flooded in 1980 when they expanded the property. Royce narrowed his eyes. "So they built the lake over the cottage, and maybe over something else," Claire added. "The letters mention experiments, trying to preserve life beyond death. That sound like some old science cult thing?" Royce exhaled slowly. "Or something worse." He glanced at the wall clock, 11:57 p.m. "Let's head back to the manor at first light. I want divers in that lake." By dawn, fog hung thick over the water. The divers moved silently, their oxygen tanks hissing in the cold air. Royce stood at the edge with Claire, watching the ripples spread across the turquoise surface. The radio crackled. "We're about 30 feet down. Visibility's low, but we're seeing structures. Wait, Sheriff, you're not gonna believe this. Go ahead. There's a staircase under here, leading down." Royce and Claire exchanged a stunned look. "A staircase? Underwater?" "Affirmative. It's built into the lake bed. Looks old. Maybe a basement from that old cottage?" A pause, then, "Hold on, there's something carved into the stone wall." Static, then silence. "Unit 3, come in," Royce said. "Do you copy?" Nothing, just the faint hiss of dead air. Then from across the lake, one of the divers surfaced, gasping, panicked, eyes wide with terror. "Sheriff, it's moving! The whole damn floor is—" He was pulled back under before he could finish. The water went still. Royce's voice broke through the radio. "Get all units back to shore, now!" But the lake stayed silent, calm as glass. And then, slowly, red began to bloom beneath the surface. Back inside the manor, Evelyn sat at the piano, hands hovering over the keys. The haunting melody drifted through the halls, soft, sorrowful, ancient. Royce stormed in. "Your husband's alive, but half your staff is missing. The divers are gone. You're going to tell me what's happening in that lake." Evelyn turned, her expression unreadable. "You still don't understand, Sheriff. The lake isn't just water. It's a gate, one that should have never been opened." "Opened by who?" "My family," she whispered. "The Voss bloodline. My grandmother Eleanor believed she could bridge life and death. When she failed, they sealed her lab beneath the cottage and flooded it." Royce's breath caught. "You're saying this was deliberate?" "Yes. The water was supposed to trap her experiments forever. But Jonathan drained part of it last year during construction, and the seal broke." Claire entered, pale-faced. "Sheriff, you need to see this." She held up a phone, footage from a traffic camera near the lake. The timestamp, 3:14 a.m. The image, Jonathan, in his red robe, standing waist-deep in the lake, speaking to someone invisible. Then, a hand, pale and thin, rose from the water to touch his face. Evelyn whispered, "She's calling for him again." By evening, the town of Windale was on lockdown. Police had sealed the entire area around the manor. No one in, no one out. But inside, something was changing. The lake was no longer still. It pulsed, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. The air smelled of ozone and iron. Royce and Claire took position near the dock, armed and tense. Evelyn stood with them, clutching a silver locket. "What's in the locket?" Claire asked. Evelyn opened it, revealing a photo, not of Jonathan, but of a woman. "Eleanor," she said softly. "My grandmother." She believed the soul could live beyond the body. She was wrong. She created something that never dies. But it doesn't belong here. A deep rumble shook the ground. The lake's surface rippled violently, wave, crashing against the shore. Royce grabbed the radio. "All units, clear the perimeter." "The lakes!" A deafening roar cut through his words. Then, from the center of the water, something rose, massive, human-shaped but translucent, like liquid glass. Dozens of faint faces swirled inside it, mouths open in silent screams. Claire stumbled back. "What the hell is that?" Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. "The lost ones. The lake kept them all." Royce raised his weapon, but Evelyn stepped forward. "No, Sheriff. This is my family's curse, and it ends with me." Before he could stop her, she walked straight into the water, red coat glowing beneath the moonlight, and the lake swallowed her whole. The next morning, rescue teams searched for hours. They found no sign of Evelyn, no trace of the divers, and no movement in the lake. The surface was calm again, as if nothing had happened. Royce stood at the gate, staring at the water. Claire approached quietly. "It's over?" Royce shook his head slowly. "No, she said the lake gives something back." As he turned to leave, a ripple appeared in the water, small, then larger. A figure slowly rose from beneath the surface. It was Evelyn. Her red coat torn, her eyes now glowing faint blue, just like the lake. She smiled faintly. "Sheriff, it's your turn to see what's beyond the gate." The lake was calm again, almost unnaturally so, as if the world itself had held its breath. Emma stood at the edge, her shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth. The reflection of the manor shimmered in the turquoise water, but it was no longer the same as before. This time the image flickered, and in the mirrored windows, she could see faces that weren't there in reality, people from her past. Their expressions twisted with fear, anger, or sorrow. Her heart pounded. She had already lost so much to the house, to the secrets it held, and yet she felt an inexplicable pull toward it. Her phone lay dead in her pocket. She hadn't called the police yet, and she knew even if she did, they wouldn't believe her. They never did. She was alone, but maybe, just maybe, she could finally face what had haunted her for years. "Emma," a voice whispered behind her. She spun around, expecting someone, anyone, but the path was empty. Only the wind stirred the red and gold leaves, carrying with it a faint, haunting melody, her mother's lullaby, long forgotten. She swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her bag. "I know you're here," she said aloud, more to herself than anyone else. "I won't run this time." The manor loomed above, its gray stones cold and imposing. Emma could feel the weight of decades, pressing down on her, memories that weren't even hers, voices that had never spoken directly to her. But somehow they all wanted her to see the truth. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the driveway, the gravel crunching under her feet. The closer she got, the more distorted the reflection in the lake became. Fuss blinked in and out. Shadows moved where there should be none. And then she saw him. In the water, a figure stood at the main entrance of the manor, a man she didn't recognize but somehow knew. His eyes were hollow, black voids that seemed to suck the light out of the world. He raised a hand slowly, pointing directly at her. Emma felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to move forward. The front door creaked open on its own. A gust of cold wind blew past her, carrying a mix of smoke and old perfume. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but she couldn't. She had come too far. Something inside her demanded answers. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of memories. Dust-covered furniture, paintings of strangers, and rooms that seemed to shift and stretch as she moved. Every step echoed, every shadow flickered, and yet she felt guided, as if invisible hands were leading her toward something important. At the end of a long hallway, she found it, a room she had never seen before. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of the house, the lake, and herself. But in the center, on a pedestal, lay a small, weathered notebook. She approached it cautiously, heart in her throat. Opening it, she recognized her father's handwriting. "Emma," it read, "some reflections are truths, some are lies. You must choose which you face." Tears blurred her vision. She had spent years chasing shadows, questioning her sanity, and now the truth was here, tangible and undeniable. She read further. The house had absorbed memories of everyone who had lived there, creating a reflection not just of the present, but of the hidden past, lies, regrets, and unspoken fears. Emma realized the man in the lake wasn't real. He was a manifestation of the lies she had told herself, the guilt she had carried for her mother's death, for leaving her brother behind, for the mistakes she had made. Every flicker in the water, every face in the mirrors, was a test, a mirror of her soul. She closed her eyes. "I see you," she whispered to the reflection, to herself, to the ghosts of the manor. "I see everything, and I forgive you, all of you." A silence fell over the room, deep and complete. When Emma opened her eyes again, the mirrors were empty. The lake outside reflected the manor perfectly, peaceful and calm without distortions. For the first time in years, she felt free. Stepping outside, the first rays of the morning sun hit the water. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, and the world seemed ordinary. Again, but she knew it wasn't. She had faced the lies, faced the reflections, and survived. She was stronger for it. Emma turned toward the driveway, seeing the police cars still at the edge of the property. They hadn't moved, but she no longer feared them. They were witnesses to her story, but not part of it. She didn't need anyone else to believe her anymore. She believed herself, and as she walked away, leaving the manor and its shadows behind, she whispered softly, "This is my life, my truth, my choice." If you've ever felt trapped by the past, haunted by lies, or lost in your own reflections, don't wait. Face your fears. Write your truth. Share your story with the world, and take control of your reflection before it controls you.